Now I can see there's going to be a problem with this series of things, in that I can't imagine keeping quiet for a whole week between podcasts. I'm going to have to work out some way of doing a daily digest of what comes about, because today there's an issue that's come up that I think is really important and needs commenting, especially as an old lefty and as someone who, although I was involved in the East German opposition movement back in the late 80s and did a lot of translation of stuff from Grenzfall and Umweltblätter, and knew various different figures from the leadership of Neues Forum, like Bärbel Boley, and people like that. I still had a soft spot for the Soviet Union, not for what it was, but for what it promised. And that was something which I regret now, and I'm completely opposed to. But the thing that's happened today is that Putin has said that the thing that he regrets most is the death of the Soviet Union. Now, there are a lot of people on the left. If you look at Arthur Scargill, he would agree with Putin that it was the greatest tragedy to befall the world in the 20th century, 21st century. And there are a lot of people on the left who are really very, very, sorry, let's just do this before it runs out of juice. Oh, too late. I have to start that again. Oh, maybe it did keep going. Sorry about that break in transmission then. Don't know what happened there. So what I was saying was that there are people on the left who are still very soft on the Soviet Union, or soft on Russia, let's be more accurate. And I think that's largely because they see it as the continuation of the Soviet Union by other means. But I think there's a difference between the sort of leftists who think that Russia is some sort of model still, and Putin, who thinks that the death of the Soviet Union was a great tragedy. And that is because Putin does not see the end of the Soviet Union as a tragedy because socialism was lost, or communism was lost, or the chance of socialism or communism were lost, because that system declared itself to be a system in transition to socialism/communism. But he mourns basically the death of the imperial adventure of the Soviet Union. Now, seeing the Soviet Union as an empire was something that I was completely opposed to before 1989, for all sorts of dogmatic, doctrinal reasons, and that's something we can discuss at some point in the future. But what Putin essentially mourns is the ability of the Soviet Union to control countries around it. And of course, not only is there an election coming up in Putin, but in Russia, but the pressure he wants to put on Ukraine is such that to mourn the loss of the Soviet Union is to say to the Ukrainians, you are going to have to rejoin this alliance that was the Soviet Union. So there is an expansionist and imperialist method to what appears to be his madness. And I think we can see that quite clearly, that Putin is an old-style imperialist. He actually wants to go back to Russian imperialism of the pre-Soviet period, but he knows that the Soviet Union is incredibly popular still in Russia. The most popular politician in Russia apparently is Stalin, according to the opinion polls, and over 50% have really always expressed their regret at the death of the Soviet Union. But Putin's economic and philosophical and ideological underpinning is a quasi-fascist one, actually. And imperialism is really just a form of fascism, really, and vice versa. Fascism is simply the logical extension of imperialism, an expansionary dimension which wants to take over the areas around it in order to create some sort of living space, Lebensraum. All empires lust after Lebensraum, and they hate being reduced down to small little islands with thrown back on their own resources, and packed countries where all the old colonial subjects had come to us, and blah blah blah, anti-immigration. But Putin makes this quite explicit when he praises Ivan Ilyin. I think that's the name. I'll put a link in underneath here later on. He praises Ivan Ilyin, who was in the 1920s was a white Russian fascist, allied very closely with fascism in its various forms, and wished to see a white Russia that would have a presence on the world stage as an empire. And Putin is regretting and mourning the loss of that ability to extend its power base, to extend the country's power base beyond its own borders. And essentially, it's Russian imperialism and not some sort of nostalgic wonderment at this wonderful Soviet Union, which was, of course, as we know, an utter failure. I think one of the greatest tragedies that ever befell the Western left was to hitch its wagon to the Soviet model, and to try to imagine that is still some sort of model to follow is pure folly, is pure madness in many ways. Some people still do it, and if you scratch a Trotskyist hard enough, you'll find a Stalinist underneath. And I say that as a recovering Trotskyist myself. But the point I'm trying to make is that the left should not throw its lot in with Russia and Putin under any circumstances. He is essentially a fascist imperialist who wishes to see Russia have its place again on the top table alongside the other great empires. And not only that, he is doing all he can to destroy those empires or collectives of states in the case of the European Union. Everything he does is about trying to destroy the European Union as an alternative pole of resistance to autocracy, international autocracy. He would rather throw his lot in with China and with autocratic regimes around the world than he would extend any democratic impulses throughout the whole of his area of influence. China, for Putin, is perestroika without the glasnost. It's a restructuring of the economy to make it competitive, to make it back into a capitalist economy, but without any of the glasnost, any of the openness that Putin tried to bring about. Not Putin, that Gorbachev was in favour of. Sort of social democratic, Swedish style, Scandinavian, Scandinavian system of government. So I'm losing my thread here, but I think what I'm trying to say is that this idea that Russia presents any sort of alternative has to be abandoned by the left. There's too much of it about on the left. People who will not accept that Russia is a danger to the left, and is it not only that, but a danger to liberal constitutions such as that which underpins the European Union. And the European Union ought to do all it can to defend itself against Russian expansionism, against Russian expansion into the Ukraine, against its support for Lukashenko and Lukashenko's attempt to undermine the EU by channeling migrants from the Middle East, Afghanistan and the rest of those countries into the European Union across the Belarusian and Polish border. These are very difficult issues, but really we have to move away from seeing Russia as any sort of underdog that needs our support. So I'm going to be talking like this every couple of hours at the rate that news is appearing. That's a good thing, though. That's a good thing in that the world is an interesting place. Where, we live in interesting times. A bit too bloody interesting sometimes. But there we are. I mean, sometimes one harks back and looks back to the time before there was any news really to worry about, when the weather was more important than the news reports. But that will do for now. The computer's gone off again. I don't know what's going on. Oh, I think it's just timing. Are we back? Yes, I think so. Right, okay. I've been waffling on for 12 minutes already. And thank you very much for listening. And good night, comrades.